Long ago, in a quiet village surrounded by tall trees and endless fields, there lived a woman named Amaka. Amaka was known throughout the village as a kind and gentle soul. She helped the sick, shared her food with the hungry, and treated every child in the village as if they were her own. But behind her warm smile was a pain she carried every day. Amaka had no child. Years had passed since her marriage, and although she prayed under the morning sun and whispered her hopes to the evening wind, her womb remained empty. In a village where motherhood was seen as a woman's greatest honor, Amaka often felt the silent weight of pity from others. Still, she refused to let bitterness grow in her heart. Perhaps, she would often say softly to herself, "The spirits have another path for me." One evening, as the golden sun slowly disappeared behind the forest hills, Amaka walked along a narrow path leading toward the forest. She had gone to gather firewood before nightfall. The forest was a place many villagers avoided. They believed powerful spirits lived among the ancient trees, watching silently as humans passed through their sacred land. But Amaka had never feared the forest. She respected it. As she bent down to gather a bundle of dry branches, a strange sound suddenly reached her ears. A cry, soft, weak, but unmistakable. Amaka froze. She listened carefully. There it was again, a baby crying. Her heart began to pound. What child would be left here? She whispered. Following the sound, she walked deeper into the forest, pushing aside thick leaves and low branches. Then she saw it. Beneath the wide roots of an enormous tree lay a small bundle wrapped in soft white cloth. Inside it was a baby boy. The child's skin glowed faintly in the dim light of the forest, and his eyes shimmered like morning dew. Amaka gasped. Who would abandon such a beautiful child? She murmured. She gently lifted the baby into her arms. The moment she did, the forest grew strangely silent. The wind stopped. The birds stopped singing. Even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. Then a deep voice echoed through the trees. Woman of a kind heart. Amaka's body trembled. She looked around, but no one was there. The voice continued. You have found what was meant for you. Amaka clutched the baby closer. Who is speaking? She asked, her voice shaking. We are the spirits of the forest, the voice replied. Fear and awe washed over her at the same time. Why is this child here? She asked carefully. This child does not belong to the world of ordinary men, the spirit said. He is a gift and a test. Amaka swallowed nervously. A test? Yes. The wind began to move again, swirling gently around her feet. You may take the child and raise him as your own, the spirits continued. He will bring joy into your life and greatness into your home. Tears filled Amaka's eyes. For years she had prayed for a child. Now one had been placed directly into her arms, but the spirits were not finished speaking. There is only one rule, the voice said slowly. Amaka listened carefully. You must never allow the child to taste salt before his 18th birthday. Amaka frowned slightly. Salt? Yes, the spirit said. If the child tastes salt before that time, the bond between him and the human world will break. Amaka's heart skipped a beat. And what will happen then? She asked softly. The forest grew cold. Then the child will return to where he truly belongs. A long silence followed. Amaka looked down at the baby in her arms. The child had stopped crying. He stared up at her with calm, mysterious eyes, as if he already understood everything. Her heart melted. I will protect him, she said firmly. I will follow your rule. The wind passed through the trees again, almost like a whisper of approval. Remember, the spirit said one final time, one taste of salt, and he will be lost to you forever. Then the voice disappeared. The forest returned to normal, as if nothing unusual had happened. Amaka stood there for several seconds, holding the baby tightly against her chest. Then she smiled. My child, she whispered softly. I will call you Obina. She wrapped the baby carefully and began walking back toward the village. That night, The lonely house that had known only silence for years was finally filled with the sound of a child's gentle breathing. Amaka raised Obina with endless love. As the years passed, something became very clear to everyone in the village. Obina was not an ordinary child. He was different, special, and perhaps destined for something far greater than anyone could imagine. But as joy grew in Amega's home, so did something else in the hearts of others. Jealousy. And jealousy, like a slow poison, was already waiting for the moment it could destroy everything. The years passed quietly in Amaka's home, but the boy she had found in the forest grew in ways no one expected. By the age of 5, Obina was already different from other children in the village. While other children struggled to climb the mango trees near the village square, Obina moved through the branches as if the wind itself carried him. When he ran, he was faster than boys, much older than him. And when he spoke, his words carried a calm wisdom that often surprised the elders. But what truly puzzled the villagers were the strange things that sometimes happened around him. One afternoon, while the village children played beside the stream, a little girl slipped on a wet stone and fell into the rushing water. The current was strong that day. The other children screamed in fear as the girl struggled to stay above the water. Before anyone could react, Obina stepped forward. He raised his small hand toward the stream. "Stop," he said quietly. And to the shock of everyone watching, the rushing water slowed, then stilled for just a moment, just long enough for the girl to crawl out onto the rocks. The children stared at Obina with wide eyes. What? What did you just do?" one boy whispered. But Obina only shrugged and walked away as if nothing unusual had happened. Soon stories about the boy began spreading throughout the village. Some said the spirits of the forest walked with him. Others whispered that Amaka had brought home something that did not belong among humans. But Amaka ignored the gossip. To her, Obina was simply her son. Every morning, she woke early to prepare his meals. She carefully cooked his food, without adding even the smallest grain of salt. She remembered the spirit's warning every single day. No salt, not even a taste. For years, she guarded that rule like a sacred promise. But not everyone in the village was happy for Amaka. Among the villagers lived a woman named Ngozi. Ngozi had once been known as the most beautiful woman in the village. Many men had tried to marry her, but she had rejected them all, believing she deserved someone wealthy and powerful. Years passed, and those opportunities slowly disappeared. Now she lived alone, and bitterness had quietly taken root in her heart. What angered her the most was Amaka. How can a woman who could not even bear a child suddenly become the mother of such a special boy? She often complained. Whenever the villagers praised Obina's kindness or intelligence, Ngozi's face hardened. "There is something wrong about that child," she would mutter. Her jealousy grew stronger the more people admired him. One evening, while several women gathered near the village well, the conversation once again turned to Obina. "That boy helped my son repair our broken roof," one woman said happily. "He's only 10 years old, but he works like a grown man." Another woman nodded. "Have you noticed how animals gather around him? Even the wild birds follow him." The women laughed warmly, but Ngozi crossed her arms. "You are all blind," she snapped. The laughter stopped. "What do you mean?" one woman asked. Ngozi leaned closer. "That boy came from the forest. No one knows who his real parents are." The women exchanged uneasy glances. "So," one of them replied, "Amaka raised him with love. That is what matters." Ngozi's eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps," she said slowly, "the forest gave her something it plans to take back." The words hung heavily in the air. From that day on, Ngozi began watching Obinna more closely. She followed him quietly whenever he walked near the forest. She listened carefully whenever the villagers spoke about him. And one afternoon, her patience finally rewarded her. That day, Obinna was helping Amaka prepare food outside their home. Ngozi passed by slowly, pretending to greet them casually, but she paid close attention to something strange. Amaka was cooking vegetables in a pot over the fire. She added pepper. She added palm oil. But when she reached for the salt bowl beside her, she suddenly stopped. Her hand froze in the air. Then she pushed the bowl away and continued cooking. Ngozi noticed immediately. Her eyes sharpened. That was odd. No one in the village cooked without salt. Later that same evening, Ngozi secretly spoke to one of the younger boys who often played with Obinna. "Tell me something," she said sweetly, handing him a roasted groundnut. "Does Obinna ever eat food with salt?" The boy shook his head. "No," he said. "His mother never put salt in his food. He says he has never tasted it before." Ngozi felt a spark of excitement rush through her. Never tasted salt? Now that was interesting. Very interesting. A slow smile spread across her face. "There must be a reason," she whispered to herself. From that moment, Ngozi became determined to uncover the secret behind the strange rule. And if breaking that rule could destroy the happiness Amaka had found, then she would gladly be the one to break it. Because jealousy had now grown, Ngozi could not stop thinking about what she had discovered. For days, the strange rule echoed in her mind. The boy had never tasted salt. It made no sense. Every child in the village ate salted food from the moment they could chew. Salt was in the soup, the yam, the stew, even the roasted corn sold by the roadside. Yet Obinna had somehow grown to the age of 10 without tasting it. There must be a reason, Ngozi whispered to herself one night as she sat alone in her dimly lit hut. Her jealousy had already twisted her thoughts, but now curiosity and bitterness pushed her even further. If salt is the one thing he must not taste, then that must also be the one thing that can destroy him. A slow smile crept across her lips. Meanwhile, life in Amaka's home continued peacefully. Obinna had grown into a gentle, hardworking boy who helped anyone in need. He carried firewood for the elderly, fetched water for widows, and spent hours helping younger children learn how to read and count. Because of this, many villagers loved him deeply. But the more people praised him, the darker Ngozi's heart became. One afternoon, Ngozi gathered a few women under the large Iroko tree in the village square. "I have been thinking about something," she said carefully. The women looked at her curiously. "What is it now?" one of them asked. Ngozi leaned closer. "Have you never wondered why Amaka refuses to cook with salt for her son?" The women frowned. "Well, some people have different ways of raising their children," one replied. Ngozi shook her head. "No, this is different." She lowered her voice. "What if that boy is not human?" The women gasped softly. "You should not say such things," another woman warned. But Ngozi continued. "Think about it. The boy came from the forest. Strange things happen around him, and now we learn he cannot even eat salt." The seed of doubt had been planted. Even though many still loved Obinna, the idea lingered in their minds. What if Ngozi was right? A few days later, Ngozi began putting the next part of her plan into motion. The village was preparing for the annual harvest celebration, a joyful event where everyone shared food, danced, and thanked the spirits for a successful farming season. Large pots of soup would be cooked, yams would be roasted, music and laughter would fill the night. Ngozi knew this would be the perfect opportunity, because during the celebration, no one would notice one small detail: salt, lots of it. On the morning of the celebration, Ngozi approached Amaka's home with a friendly smile. "Good morning, my sister," she greeted sweetly. Amaka looked surprised, but welcomed her politely. "Good morning, Ngozi." Ngozi pretended to admire the decorations being prepared for the festival. "I heard Obina will be helping serve food tonight," she said casually. Amaka nodded proudly. Yes, the elders asked him to help distribute the roasted yams to the children. Ngozi hid her excitement. That was even better than she had hoped. She leaned closer. "You must be proud of him," she said softly. Amaka smiled warmly. "Very proud." Ngozi paused for a moment, then spoke again. "You know, people sometimes whisper strange things about the boy. I think it would silence them if he joined the other children fully during the celebration." Amaka frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Well," Ngozi said carefully, "sharing the same food as everyone else would show that he is no different from the rest." Amaka's heart skipped. For a moment, the spirit's warning flashed in her mind. You must never allow the child to taste salt before his 18th birthday. But she quickly pushed the thought away. "No," she said firmly. "Obina eats only the food I prepare." Ngozi smiled politely, but inside she felt anger boiling. So Amaka still protected the secret. That was fine, because Ngozi had another plan. That evening, the village square came alive with music and dancing. Fires burned brightly as large pots of soup bubbled over the flames. Children ran around laughing. Drums echoed through the warm night air. Obina stood proudly beside the elders, helping hand out roasted yams to the younger children. Amaka watched him from a distance, with joy in her heart. "My son," she whispered softly. But somewhere in the crowd, Ngozi waited patiently. Hidden in her hand was a small cloth containing something simple, yet dangerous: salt. She waited until Obina moved toward the food table to collect more yams. Then she stepped forward. "Obina," she called warmly. The boy turned and smiled. "Yes, Auntie Nozi. I brought something special for you," she said kindly. From her cloth, she revealed a small piece of roasted yam. But before handing it to him, she had rubbed it lightly with salt. Just enough. Not enough for anyone to notice, but enough to break the rule. "You have worked hard tonight," she said sweetly. "You deserve a treat." Obina hesitated. "My mother usually prepares my food," he replied politely. Ngozi laughed the moment Obina swallowed the piece of roasted yam. Something changed. At first it was subtle. A strange wind swept through the village square, causing the fire flames to flicker violently. The drums slowly fell silent. One by one, the villagers stopped dancing. A heavy stillness settled over the celebration. Obina blinked. His body suddenly felt strange. Very strange. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. Across the square, Amaka pushed through the crowd in panic. "Obina!" she cried again. But it was already too late. The sky above the village darkened as thick clouds gathered unnaturally fast. A deep rumble of thunder rolled across the land. The villagers looked up in fear. "What is happening?" someone whispered. Obina staggered backward slightly. His chest tightened as if something inside him had awakened. Memories, strange memories, began flooding his mind. Images of tall ancient trees, whispering winds, glowing spirits moving through the forest at night. He clutched his head in confusion. "Mother," he called weakly. Amaka finally reached him and grabbed his shoulders. "What did you eat?" she asked frantically. Obina looked at her with frightened eyes. "Roasted yam. Auntie Nozi gave it to me." Amaka's heart shattered instantly. Her eyes slowly turned toward Ngozi, who stood frozen among the villagers. The truth was clear. But before Amaka could speak, the wind roared louder. The forest trees surrounding the village began swaying violently. Leaves spun through the air like a storm had suddenly arrived. Then a powerful voice echoed across the entire village. The same voice Amaka had heard 10 years ago in the forest. The rule has been broken. The villagers gasped in terror. Some fell to their knees. Others covered their ears in fear. The voice continued, deep and ancient. A child has tasted salt. Amaka collapsed beside Obina, tears pouring down her face. Please, she cried to the sky. Please forgive us. Obina's body began glowing faintly, with a soft golden light. The villagers stared in shock. What is happening to him? Someone whispered. But deep down, Amaka already knew. The spirits had come to reclaim what belonged to them. Obina looked at his mother, confusion filling his eyes. Mother, why are you crying? Amaka held his face in her trembling hands. Because I failed to protect you. The wind grew stronger. A circle of swirling leaves formed around them. Then the spirit's voice spoke again. Woman of a kind heart, we warned you. Amaka shook her head desperately. I kept the rule for 10 years. I protected him every day. The voice softened slightly. We know. Amaka's tears fell onto Obina's face. Then please, don't take him from me. For a moment, the storm seemed to hesitate, but the spirit's answer came slowly. The bond between him and the human world has been broken. Obina suddenly gasped. His body lifted slightly from the ground as the golden glow around him grew brighter. The villagers cried out in fear. Amaka grabbed his hand tightly. No, she screamed. You cannot take my son. Obina looked down at her, his eyes now glowing faintly like moonlight. Mother, what is happening to me? Maka could barely speak through her tears. You were a gift from the forest, and I promised to protect you. The spirit spoke again. The child belongs to us. The wind howled louder. Obina slowly began rising higher into the air. Amaka refused to let go of his hand. If he goes, she cried, then take me instead. The entire village fell silent. Even the storm seemed to pause. The spirit spoke again, their voice now softer, almost thoughtful. You would give your life for him? Yes, Amaka cried without hesitation. He may have come from the forest, but he is my son. The wind slowed. The glowing light around Obina flickered. Then the spirit spoke words that no one expected. True love carries great power. The swirling storm slowly faded. Obina gently descended back toward the ground. The golden light surrounding him softened. The voice continued. The rule was broken, and the child cannot remain fully human. Amaka's heart sank, but the spirits were not finished. However, because of your love and sacrifice, he will not be taken away completely. The villagers leaned forward in silence. Obina's glow slowly faded, though a faint light remained in his eyes. The spirits declared the final truth. The child will now walk between two worlds. Amaka looked up in confusion. What does that mean? The voice answered gently. By day, he will live among humans. And by night, he will belong to the forest. Gasps spread across the crowd. Amega held Obina tightly. At least she would not lose him completely. But one person in the crowd trembled with fear. Ngozi. Her cruel plan had unleashed something far greater than she expected. And deep inside her heart, regret had finally begun to grow. For a long moment, the entire village remained silent. The wind had calmed, the storm clouds slowly drifting away, as if the sky itself had decided to forgive the land. Obina stood quietly beside Amaka. The golden glow around him had faded, but something about him had changed forever. His eyes now carried a faint shimmer, like moonlight. reflecting on water. Amaka gently held his face, studying him carefully. "Are you all right, my son?" she whispered. Obina nodded slowly. "I feel different," he said. He looked toward the forest at the edge of the village. For the first time in his life, he could feel it clearly. The whispers of the trees, the quiet breathing of the earth, the ancient spirits watching from the shadows. He understood now. Part of him belonged there. The spirits spoke one last time, their voice now softer than before. "Remember, child of the forest, use the gift you carry to protect life, not to harm it." Obina bowed his head respectfully. "I will." Then the voice faded away completely. The forest fell silent. Life slowly returned to the village square as people began whispering among themselves. Some were still afraid. Others were amazed. But one person could not move. Ngozi. She stood frozen in the crowd, her heart pounding with shame. The truth of what she had done was now clear to everyone. Her jealousy had nearly destroyed a mother's happiness. And though the spirits had shown mercy, the damage she caused could never be undone. Slowly, Ngozi stepped forward. Her voice trembled. "Amaka." The villagers watched closely. Amaka turned toward her. Her eyes filled not with anger, but with deep sadness. Ngozi lowered her head. "I am the one who gave him the salted yam," she confessed quietly. Gasps spread through the crowd. "I allowed jealousy to control my heart," she continued. "I could not stand seeing your happiness." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to hurt you." Amaka looked at her silently for a long moment. Then she spoke softly. "You almost took my son away forever." Ngozi nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know." She fell to her knees. "I deserve whatever punishment the village decides." The elders of the village stepped forward. They spoke quietly among themselves before the oldest elder addressed the crowd. "Jealousy is a poison that destroys not only others, but the one who carries it." He looked at Ngozi carefully. "You allowed your bitterness to endanger an innocent child." Ngozi lowered her head even further. "I know," she whispered. The elder continued, "But today, we also witnessed something powerful." He gestured toward Amaka. A mother's love strong enough to move the spirits themselves. The villagers nodded. What they had seen that night would be remembered for generations. The elder turned back to Ngozi. "Your punishment will not be exile." Ngozi looked up in surprise. Instead, the elder continued, "You will spend the rest of your days serving the people of this village, helping the elderly, feeding the hungry, and caring for the children." Ngozi's eyes widened. Only through kindness can you cleanse the jealousy that once ruled your heart. Ngozi bowed her head deeply. "I will accept this," she said with a trembling voice. And from that day forward, Ngozi truly changed. She helped rebuild broken homes. She cared for sick villagers. She even helped Amaka whenever she could, though she never expected forgiveness. Years passed. Obina grew into a young man, admired throughout the land. During the day, he lived among the villagers, helping them farm, build, and protect the village. But every night, as the moon rose over the trees, Obina would quietly walk toward the forest. The spirits welcomed him as one of their own. They taught him the ancient language of the wind and the secrets of the earth. Through him, the forest and the village became forever connected. Whenever danger approached the village, the animals of the forest would warn Obina. Whenever drought threatened the land, he would guide the villagers to hidden water sources deep in the woods. People from distant villages soon began traveling, far just to see the young man who walked between two worlds. But no matter how great Obina became, he never forgot the woman who had chosen him when he was just a helpless child beneath the forest tree. Amaka. One evening, many years later, Obinna sat beside his aging mother outside their home. The sky glowed orange as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the forest. Amaka looked at him with pride. "You have become everything I hoped for," she said gently. Obinna smiled. "And everything I am is because you loved me." Amaka squeezed his hand softly. For a moment, they both sat quietly. Then Obinna spoke again. "You know, mother, the spirits once told me something." Amaka looked at him curiously. "What was it?" Obinna smiled. "They said that sometimes the greatest magic in the world is not found in the forest." He looked at her with warmth. "It is found in the heart of someone who chooses to love." Amaka's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. And so the story of Obinna, the child of the forest, became one of the most powerful legends ever told in that land. A story about jealousy and forgiveness, about destiny and sacrifice, but most of all, a story about the unstoppable power of a mother's love. And even today, elders still tell this tale to remind the young of one simple truth: love can change destiny, but jealousy can destroy it.